Joe Perez, Flipping Unleashed. Hope you guys are having a good day, and more importantly, I hope everything really is going well. No doubt we're in some interesting and unique times. And like anything, for many of us, this is unprecedented. I've never encountered something like this in my life, and I'm going to guess many of you haven't, So I decided, heck, we're in a unique time. I'm in California. The whole state's on lockdown right now. We're in shelter in place. But I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and put this home on the market. And so the home is in Fullerton, California, which is the northern part of Orange County. The home's been fixed up really nice, And I said, let's see what happens. Let's put it up on the market because, I'm watching the news, I'm checking everything out, and there's not a lot of good news that I'm seeing every day. So I wasn't really expecting a lot. But nonetheless, I decided, let's go ahead and put the home on the market. So I did, right? So I put it on the market for $530,000. I think it's probably worth more, about $585,000, right? So we effectively put on the market about Friday at 5. That's how it worked out. By the time we got it staged, got it photographed, we put all of our lock boxes, put it in the MLS, the computer system, and all that, right? Well, something crazy happens afterwards. Absolutely crazy, okay? I have this computer program, we have this box we put on, and it starts telling me the showings. Well, within a short amount of time, I think within by Saturday afternoon, I already had 10, 12 showings. The offer started coming in. Now, some of you might say to yourself, well, that's because you advertised it less. Well, yeah, I did. I put it at $530. Like I said, I think it's worth $585. But yet still, I was very surprised with the disconnect between what I'm seeing and reading on the news and how the public is feeling. Now, I'm not here to make an argument that the news is under or over exaggerating. On the contrary. I think everything is happening right now are things that we should take serious, and how serious you want to take it, I think, is an individual choice for you guys to make based on how much what you have or haven't read. Okay, so that's not really my point here. My point is that I'm just surprised with the results, and because I have these great results, I'd like to share. I'd like to share what my criteria, how it is now that I'm going to pick a buyer. Okay, because it sounds easy. Back in the old days, and when I say old days, it's funny because you had there's a time in our calendar, it says BC and AD, right? And that's how we did our dating. Well, now I have a new set of dating. I have before lockdown and after lockdown, because it seems like everything's changing a lot in my local economy over here in California based on when the state was locked down and based on when it wasn't. So did I expect post-lockdown, right, after lockdown, did I expect to achieve so many offers? No, I didn't. Can I make a decision the way I normally do? No, absolutely not. It's a different time. It's a whole different environment, and an unprecedented environment calls for unprecedented criteria. So let's go over some key strategies or key things to look at. So one of the things I want you guys to bear in mind is that right now, one of our keys, our biggest key, is getting a deal to close, okay? So that's one of the fundamental things right now. It's making sure a deal closed, because we don't want to be in a situation that as the information flows in and the government makes changes or results come in regarding anything coronavirus related or whatever, all these factors can greatly change the environment and could cost you your buyer. So that's my biggest concern, is what are the things that I can assure myself that only will I get the best price possible, but the deal will close. Okay, so one, obviously price is a consideration, but price is not just a consideration for the obvious. Oh, I want to make as much money as I can. Okay, that's definitely one thing, but there's something else also. Price tells you a couple other things. One, it tells you about enthusiasm level. I want a very enthusiastic buyer. Okay, that's a buyer that tells me that is going to stick it out. If all of a sudden they come home and there's a doom and gloom report on their computer, their email, whatever, they're not going to cancel. So I'm looking for enthusiastic buyers, and what says more I'm enthusiastic than a good price? Someone who offers you a solid price for your home. So number one, let's focus on price. Also, so you need to look at contingencies. They are legally valid ways for a buyer to be able to cancel a contract and receive their full deposit refund. There's all different kinds of contingencies. There's a contingency to inspect the home. If they inspect it and don't like it within a certain period, they're allowed to say, hey, you know what? I don't like the home. No questions asked. We cancel. Give them your deposit back. There's an appraisal contingency. The home doesn't appraise, right? A loan contingency, which is typically your biggest one. The biggest one is loan contingency. There's other ones, disclosures and all that, but the biggest one is loan contingency. Loan contingency means the buyer have a certain amount of time to qualify, and if they don't qualify, they can cancel with no cost or consequence, get the deposit back. Well, as a seller, I don't really want a lot of deals with a ton of contingencies, because there's something to be said that, I want to have a fair amount of confidence that if I give you the deal, especially if I got 12 buyers, I want to give it to the buyer who's not just going to cancel for anything, right? I want to give it to the buyer who's most prepared, okay? Once again, confidence. Confidence speaks a lot to preparation. When we prepare for things in life, we're more confident, right? Well, what speaks more of confidence than a buyer who's willing to remove contingencies? In other words, come out and say, hey, Joe, as of this day, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that I can't cancel for any reason. And if I do, you get to keep my deposit, right? That's what you want. Somebody who walks it and talks it. So try to get shortened contingency periods. I want somebody who's going to reduce those periods. Preferably, I want 14, 17 days to cancel all contingencies. And if you do that, it tells me you're very confident in your position as a buyer, which is what I want. Number 3, deposits, buyer deposits. That's really important, okay? The larger the deposit, the more they're willing to risk. Once again, speaks volumes of confidence, right? Absolute confidence that, hey, they feel good about their buyer profile, and because of that, they're willing to give you a big deposit or a substantial deposit. Also says a lot about their economic viability, right? If a buyer's hurting for money and they're scrounging and all that, they're probably not going to want to give you a big deposit. So once again, these are all things that I look for that speak volumes as to the buyer. Number 4, length of escrow. For those of you who are in other states, escrow is the period we go through to sell a home. Other states, you don't really necessarily call it the word escrow, but it's the process of selling a home. Whatever that process is, you want to try to shorten it. You want to try to go with the buyer who's willing to go with the shortest period possible. And part of the reason is, as we already know, is 2 things. 1, a buyer who's willing to take a lower escrow period. That's a buyer who's prepared, well coordinated with their lender, has everything in place. That's a confident buyer, and we want confident buyers, right? And the other thing is, we don't want any surprises. We all know that things are changing daily, almost daily right now, right? Different news information is coming out with respect to the virus and different protocols and quarantining and all that. We just don't know, right? And because we just don't know, why take a chance? Why take a chance? Because what's true today might not be true 3 or 4 weeks from now. 5, loan rates. And more importantly, is the loan locked? What does that mean? When you go to a lender, when the buyer goes to the lender to get qualified for the loan, hopefully they've locked their interest rate. Because if they haven't locked their interest rates can fluctuate. They can fluctuate on a daily basis. And what you don't want is a situation where a buyer got pre-qualified 2 months ago or even 1 month ago, pre-lockdown, right, where interest rates were great and everything's fine and there's no calamity and the stock market was at its highest point, and the lender quoted them a kick-ass interest rate and they're all excited and they're out there looking for property based on this low interest rate. Because remember, interest rates translate into monthly payments, right? And then what you don't want is all of a sudden you accept their offer because you say, okay, I like this guy, and then this buyer goes back to the lender and says, okay, you know what, I'm going to buy Joe's house now. And then the lender pre-qualifies them. All of a sudden their payment is higher and they're like, hey, what the heck? And the lender explains, well, I'm sorry, interest rates have gone up. And they're like, oh, well, I didn't know this. Just to give you an example, on a $500,000 loan, if interest rates were to go up 1 point, just 1%, right, you could see an increase in monthly payment of $416. That can kill your deal. So find out. Even if you have to, speak to the loan officer. Tell the realtor, hey, you know what, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear from a loan officer. I do that all the time. All the freaking time. Call him up and find out. Find out if he locked the loan. Find out what current interest rates are. Find out what he quoted on the approval. What rate he quoted the buyer on their approval, how long ago. And make sure that those numbers are still current so that way the buyer doesn't go through what we call payment shock. And finally, don't forget profession. Profession is really important. Why is that? Because right now, we have all kinds of mass layoffs. You got all kinds of people that are holding on, hoping that they're going to make it through this time right now. And all those people out there, we wish them the best. But right now, you have to make sure that you pick a buyer. You have to make a strong assessment to see if that buyer is in an occupation that is diminishing right now or a strong occupation. For example, strong occupations: the medical industry, healthcare professionals, banks, grocery stores, city, county, and state municipalities. These are all industries that right now aren't showing any sign of wavering. Then you have to be careful with the diminishing industries, the hospitality industries, hotels, restaurants, bars, cruise liners, and airline industries. All those things right now are industries that just aren't doing very well right now, and what people are still employed in those industries might not be. They might not survive your escrow. They might not survive that period, and you want to make sure that you get people that will survive. If you're unsure, go ahead and Google, but make sure to find out what their profession is, and the way you do that is read the paperwork. Ask them for a copy of the approval. Talk to the loan officer. Sometimes they have a thing called a DU, certain kind of approval, right? Direct underwriter, which tells you what their profession is. Ask the realtor. Find out what this person does. And if you're unsure, if you can't tell if that's an industry that's diminishing or not, go ahead and Google it. Google the industry and you'll find out how it's doing right now, okay? And then on a side note, I wanted to talk to you guys about, there's this new addendum that realtors are using, at least out in California. I imagine that it's going to be like that in most of the states, if not already. And it's called the coronavirus addendum. So that's like this new paperwork, this new form created now by the California Association of Realtors, which I think, I'm not sure, was done in conjunction with the National Association of Realtors, right? And basically what this addendum says is it's called like a force majeure or force majeure. That's a legal concept that basically says that you are excused. You are allowed to not perform your contractual duties if something outside of your influence happens, right? Something outside of your scope that you could control happened that made it impossible for you to perform. Well, coronavirus is doing that to a lot of people, right? Some realtors are submitting that addendum and some aren't. Now, obviously, I want to be sympathetic with the buyers, but at the same time, common sense says to me that if I got a buyer who didn't submit that addendum, once again, that speaks to their confidence level. And if I have a buyer that did submit that addendum, he's giving me a heads up that at any given moment, they can cancel this clause regardless of contingencies, cancel the whole, they can exercise this clause, they could cancel the entire contract, and I got to give them a full refund, and the deal's dead, which wouldn't be beneficial for me, because what if that happened 3 or 4 weeks into it, and then I call up some of my backup offers, people from before, and a bunch of them already bought another home or they don't want to buy anymore, so it puts me in a tough situation, right? So you want to make sure to also use that as another criteria. See who put that addendum in their offer and who didn't. So remember, we're trying to figure out as much as we can about the buyer, right? Nobody knows the buyer better than the buyer. So these things that we're looking at, these are statements the buyer is making. Statements the buyer is making about their financial profile and how they perceive themselves. And perception is very important. As a matter of fact, perception is reality, right? So we want to know in every way, shape, or form how the buyer perceives himself, because the last thing we want is a situation, because reality is perception, whether or not it's true, it's what they think is true. They come home and they read some bad article, watch some show on TV or something, and then they get spooked and they cancel on us. So all these things are very important to understand our buyer and our buyer profiling. That's what we're doing. We're buyer profiling, okay? So hopefully this works for you guys. Hopefully this makes a difference. Check me out on my Flipping Unleashed channel. Check me out on social media at Flipping Unleashed. If you guys have any questions about what we talked about today or how this deal is coming along, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Hopefully you guys can make the best out of this. Hopefully everybody's staying safe out there, and I'll be posting some more cool stuff on some more properties I'm getting ready to put on the market, okay? You guys have a great day.